Hey guys, what is going on? It is Brooke, or the Undead DM. I am back at it again with another video for you today. And in today's episode, we're going to be going over the second to last subclass for the Shaman by Ross Leiser called Warchanting. Now, if you guys haven't seen the first video on the core class of the Shaman, I will leave a link down in the description below if you want to check out that video. I would highly recommend it first in order to fully understand the concept of this class, as well as check out the other subclasses for more context on what I think of this class in general, as well as the spirits to get a general idea of how this class is meant to play. But without further ado, let's get started. So, the brief amount of reading that I've done about war chanting is that it's kind of like the Bard College of Swords, or sorry, the College of Valor subclass, where this is meant to be the battle one. This is meant to be the battle shaman. And that's personified in the bonus proficiencies at level 2, where you get proficiency with medium armor and an instrument of your choice. Not any more weapons, which is a bit unfortunate, but we're going to get to the next ability, War Chant, where you can use your inspirational power to strengthen your allies and bolster their courage and inspire them to do great deeds. As an action, you begin a magical war chant which lasts for an entire minute or until you're incapacitated. You can end your war chant at any time on your turn with no action required, and your war chant can be a song of battle, rhythmic drum beat, wordless intonation, or any other stirring auditory performance. For the duration of the war chant, you and friendly creatures within 30 feet of you that can hear you gain the following benefits. At the beginning of the creature's turn, it gains temporary hit points equal to half of your shaman level, and when the creature hits with an attack roll, it grants a +1 bonus to the attack's damage roll. And then once you use this, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest, or until you expel a spell slot of first level or higher to use it again. Okay, we're going to go over all the abilities once I'm done covering the entire class. So, at 6th level, you get an extra attack. Then at 10th level, you get Guided Chant, where your war chant becomes suffused with the power of your spirit guides. While you are channeling a spirit guide, each creature who benefits from your war chant gains an additional benefit depending on your spirit guide. And once you have reached 18th level in this class and can channel 2 spirit guides simultaneously, both spirit guides benefits apply. So, we're just going to go over them really quick. So the air spirit, when the creature starts its turn within the area, its speed is increased by 10 feet. With the ancestral spirit, they have advantage on saving throws it makes against being charmed, frightened, and poisoned. The animal spirit has advantage on perception checks it makes using hearing, sight, or smell, and can take the search action as a bonus action. Then the benevolent spirit, the number of temporary hit points granted by it equals your shaman level plus your charisma, so you add your charisma modifier to that. The earth spirit grants advantage on any saving throw against being moved or knocked prone against its will, and non-magical difficult terrain created by earth or plants costs no extra movement. So the earth spirit makes so you can't be pushed or knocked prone, and non-magical difficult terrain doesn't slow you. Then the fiery spirit, once per turn, once on each of the creature's turn, when it deals damage, it could choose additional fire damage equal to half your shaman level. The lost spirit, on each of the turns, it can teleport a number of feet equal to its walking speed, but its movement speed is reduced to 0 for the rest of the turn. And the malevolent spirit, they gain a bonus to damage rolls. The damage bonus granted by your war chant goes from +1 to +3. The mischievous spirit, the creature can take the help action as a bonus action. The mournful spirit allows when the creature is hit with an attack, it can use its reaction to force the target to re-roll the die and take the new roll. And the vengeful spirit has once on each of the creature's turns. When the creature misses with an attack roll, it can re-roll the die and use the new roll. The warrior spirit grants a +1 bonus to AC to each attack roll it makes. And the water spirit grants the ability to breathe underwater, hear and speak normally while underwater, and gain a swimming speed of 25 feet. And finally, the last ability is War Leader, where your words and songs are so suffused with spiritual power that they can give your comrades in arms the will to continue fighting, even through grievous injury. If a creature other than you that you could see drops to 0 hit points but doesn't die outright, you can use your reaction to attempt to protect them from death. The target must be able to hear you. You make a DC 10 Charisma check, adding your proficiency bonus, and if you succeed, the creature drops to 1 hit point instead. Each time you use this feature past the first, the DC increases by 5, and when you finish a short or long rest, or expend a 5th level spell slot or higher, it goes back down to 10. So, the bonus proficiencies, if this is meant to be a in the fray style Shaman Class subclass, it is doing a very bad job. Because the Shaman only gets 1d8 hit points, which is the same as the Cleric, but the Cleric by default gets access to medium armor. And then when it gets the subclasses that actually make it want to go into sort of a 30 feet to melee range of the enemies, it gets access to heavy armor or better weapons. Meanwhile, if you haven't seen my last video, or the core class video, the Shaman, as you can see here, only gets access to simple weapons, meaning that as a subclass, you have no access to good weapons. You can't get martial weapons, and you only get medium armor. You don't even get access to shields. So you're stuck with getting slightly better armor, like slightly better base armor numbers, less dex, which in this case is good because you're not using your dex all that often. But the fact that you don't get access to heavy armor, you don't get access to shields, and you don't get access to martial weapons for a subclass that seems to be focusing more on a closer range style of play is very strange, considering how every other class that has either its entire mechanical concept based around being that close to people, or has a subclass that kind of encourages them to go in that range, similar to the Bard's College of Swords, they have abilities that facilitate that playstyle and often make it better, with some exceptions. But those aren't really good to begin with. War chanting seems to be some kind of weird no ground because it doesn't offer you anything beneficial, really. And the instrument of your choice doesn't really matter because you could just take the entertainer feat and do the same thing. Not the entertainer feat, the entertainer background, and get 2 free instruments, I think. Like 2, maybe 1 free instrument. So you don't even need to do that. You could easily just make this proficiency with medium armor and martial weapons. Hell, give it medium armor, heavy armor, shields, and martial weapons. Because then at least it'll be somewhat on par with the cleric. As for the war chant, it lasting for 1 minute and requiring your action to do is fine, and the fact that it doesn't state that you have to concentrate on it like you were concentrating on a spell is good. And gaining temporary hit points and gaining a +1 to damage sounds good, but remember, this is only a +1 to damage rolls. It doesn't give you a +1 bonus to hit, which, yes, at level 2 may be a little bit skirting the edge of strong, but if you're trying to be a melee class, melee characters, they need the bonuses. Otherwise, they aren't going to hit very often, and if they do hit, they're going to do obviously a lot of damage. But as melee classes, that's kind of their job. If you are, as a melee class, putting yourself at risk of 95% of the entire list of creatures in 5th edition that are in any sort of source material, official source material, by Wizards of the Coast, 95% of creatures are melee with no ranged options at all. So if you are a class who is specifically designed to be in with those creatures that have +17s to hit, +19s to hit, +19s to their strength, dex, and con saves, and have legendary resistances, and you only get a measly +1 to only the damage and not to hit, it sucks. And temporary hit points equal to half your shaman level. Why not just your shaman level? Half your shaman level, at this point, you're just getting 1 temporary HP. Sure, 1 HP can mean the difference between life and death, but I would rather take 2 over 1. And the fact that the Inspiring Leader feat that you can take at level 1 as a variant human guarantees you more temporary hit points than this that you can recharge every short rest. Since a short rest takes 1 hour, you could just redo it and give them even more temporary hit points than this ability. Make it your level, and then upgrade it later to be maybe twice, maybe 3 times your level. Then that's actually a good bonus, because later on in the game, that's at least 30 additional HP. That can allow you to survive an entire fireball. That's insane. That's really good. And also, it only being once per long rest. Complete garbage. For an ability this weak, it needs to either be once per short or long rest, or it needs to be multiple times per short or long rest. Something. Because 1 temporary hit point and +1 to damage at level 2, and that's all you get until you get to level 10, which is basically endgame. No. That's just not good, because a +1 to damage is a stagnated bonus, meaning it's added onto your DPR, so it's always just going to have an increase of +1. It's going to be added to the modifiers similar to how you calculate DPR, because when you calculate DPR, you take the average damage that your die would do. So if you're dealing a d6 damage, that's 3.5, because if you take 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6, and then divide it by 6, you get 3.5. That's the average. We all learned this in math class. Then if you take 3.5 and you add your modifier of, say, +3 at this point, then you add this +1, that's +4. Once you add those together, you put in parentheses, and then you multiply by 0.65, or 65% chance to hit on average. It's a very rough estimate, but you're getting less damage because you're not increasing it by that much. You're increasing it by maybe half a point of damage. You're not increasing it by a single point. You're increasing it on average by maybe half, if not less than that, of a point of damage. It is inconsequential. If this added a +1 bonus to hit as well, it would make that 65 go to a 70, since you're increasing it by 1, because every point on the d20 is equal to 5%. So if this was a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls, and the temporary hit points was increased, and the number of times you could use it was increased, okay, sure. Extra attack at 6th level, it's pretty standard for subclasses that don't typically have extra attack built into the core class, which is fine, because you're getting it 1 level later than every other class that actually has access to extra attack as part of its main kit, which is fine. It's fine. At least it's a damage boosting ability. Then at 10th level, you get all this gobbledygook of random abilities that some of them are somewhat useful, some of them aren't. Air Spirit is strange because it increases your movement speed by 10 feet, but the strange thing is that this kind of works like the Oath of Glory, where while creatures are in the aura, their movement speed is increased by 10 feet. But does that happen as soon as they enter? So if they have 5 feet of movement left and then they step into your aura, do they just gain 10 additional feet and they can move 10 additional feet? Or do they already have to be in it and start their turn? But this one does fix it by saying when the creature starts its turn, meaning you can start your turn in the aura and gain, let's say you have 30 feet, you now have 40 feet. And you have it until the end of turn, so it does kind of fix that problem. I wish Go with the Glory did this a little bit. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. But whatever. The Ancestral Spirit, advantage against being charmed, frightened, and poisoned. It's pretty standard. I don't know why. I don't know how this would be useful to anyone who's like an elf, because they already get that pretty much. The Animal Spirit, advantage on perception checks, but all of these abilities, to me at least, are completely worthless. All of the abilities that are like, you have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, frightened, and poison. You have advantage on perception checks. You have advantage on this other miscellaneous check. You have the ability to do this. Like, okay. The Ancestral Spirit and the Animal Spirit are probably the worst, and maybe the Air Spirit too. They are the most likely worst offenders in this because these are totally roleplay things. Like, yes, charm, frighten, and poison can happen in combat, and 10 feet of additional movement is very useful in combat. But the fact you gotta remember is that you only get one free war chant every long rest, and you have to expend a first level spell slot or higher to get your use back again. And at 10th level, you have a lot better things to be doing than spending one first level spell slot to do this again. Especially since it doesn't gain any ability after this to regain it on a short and long rest, rather than just a long rest. So most of these abilities, I think the most useful thing would probably be the Malevolent Spirit, as I stated in my Spirit Guides video. It is probably the best spirit, because whenever it has an effect based on the subclass, it always is the best, because the Malevolent Spirit allows you to make the damage increase to +3. The second one would probably be the Warrior Spirit, because you gain a +1 bonus to AC and attack rolls. And then I would say probably the Lost Spirit, since you can essentially teleport 30 feet as opposed to walking 30 feet, meaning if you don't have a climbing speed, you can just teleport 30 feet into the air because you're expending all your movement. And there's a ledge like 20 feet above you, you can't jump that high. You could just teleport there and be all Gucci. You could teleport on top of the boss, teleport behind a pillar. And it doesn't even state that you can expend all of your movement. You can forego its entire movement to teleport up to a number of feet equal to a walking speed. Okay, so it does take your entire movement, meaning if you don't teleport the entire distance, you do lose out on some movement speed. But the utility of essentially being able to Misty Step instead of move is kind of good. The one caveat is that you have to be within the range of the shaman to use this, which 30 feet, kind of a limited range. But most creatures are going to have 30 feet of movement anyway, unless you're a barbarian or a monk, or you have the mobile feat, and or you're a tabaxi haste, pretty much any spell that does that, then you're going to be kind of restricted. But give this to anyone who has increased movement speed, even for just the turn. That's kind of insane. And then War Leader, requiring your reaction to stop one creature from going to 0, and then having the DC penalize you that much is a bit overkill. And also requiring a 5th level slot or higher to do this again and a DC of 10. You're losing out on potential control and area denial spells by getting rid of a 5th level slot just to have a DC 10 essentially Death Ward, when you could just cast Death Ward on your entire party prior to going into an encounter, and it lasts 8 hours, and this is essentially what this is. Death Ward is a 4th level spell. You get that at like 7th or 8th level. You get this. You get the spell that essentially replaces this entire ability 6 levels earlier. That's it. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. It's just a straight worse version of Death Ward, and Death Ward isn't even that good because Death Ward doesn't require your reaction. It could be rest casted, and on top of that, it requires a spell slot, one spell slot level lower than this ability requires, and it doesn't have a DC attached to it. It just happens. It has all the same stipulations, and it's 6 levels later. It is 6 levels later. That would be like giving the Life Domain Cleric at level 10 the ability that, as an action, it can heal 3d8 plus your spellcasting modifier worth of hit points. Oh, you mean exactly like the spell Cure Wounds at 3rd level, which I got 6 levels earlier? That one? Yeah, that would be awful. And then you have to expend a 3rd level spell slot to do it again. It's the exact same thing. Overall, it's not bad. It just needs a lot more in the numbers game and a lot more of the recovery game in order for it to be good. And the 14th level ability just needs to be either changed entirely or it needs to not have a DC attached to it, and that each creature could just benefit from it once, because that's essentially Death Ward. Because then that would make it kind of interesting with stacking with Death Ward, since you can Death Ward your entire team, including yourself, and then if your ally goes down, they pop their Death Ward, and then you heal them, and then they get back down, you can use War Leader to pop them back up and give them essentially a second Death Ward, but they can only use it once. I would also add a healing element to it. Just a little bit of healing, not a lot. But overall, I think it's probably the most mid subclass. There are definitely worse subclasses in it, but it's definitely not the best. But with that being said, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more. In the next episode, I will be covering the final subclass for this, called the Witch Medicine subclass. And then after that, I'll be going over its spells, possibly. Or I might do something, I might do a different class overlook. Either way, I will see you all in the next video. Latest.